Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good night, depending on where you're watching from. So happy to be here at the Imaginative Online Film Festival and hosting this panel or moderating this panel with great friends who I love dearly. Aka Hansen from Greenland, Lisa Holmberg, and Laila Utsi from Sápmi. My name is Emil. I'm a Greenlandic film producer based in Copenhagen. Today we're going to talk about indigenous languages and indigenous language productions in the circumpolar region. Of course, as Greenlanders and Samis, we know mostly from our own territories, countries and lands, but we hopefully will also be able to go a little bit broader and talk about some other things that goes on in the region right now. But before we start, it would just be really nice to hear from all of you guys a brief introduction to who you are, what you've been doing, and what you're doing right now. And if we start in Greenland, Aka Hansen.
All right. Was it who we have been doing, or
sounded
like that? No, sorry. Yes, I'm here in Nuuk. I work and live here. I'm a filmmaker. I've been working in film and TV for 12 years. Mostly in Nuuk, but I also lived 5 years in Denmark, where I studied at the Super 16 Film School to become a film producer. And last year I started working at the film workshop. So I've been working with talent development for the last 1.5 years, and so I'm very much into the what's going on right now in Greenland right now with the younger generations, but also in general.
Okay, we're going to go a lot more into that later, I'm sure. So Laila and Lisa?
Yeah, so Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Lisa Holmberg. I'm working here in the International Sámi Film Institute. Our headquarters is here in Kautokeino, middle of wilderness, but it's not wilderness to us. It's our home.
It's the center of the universe.
It is the center of the universe. Yeah, we are working here. We have 4 workers, 2 dogs, and 1 reindeer. And that's all we need. Lots of money, we need more, but it doesn't matter. So I was born in the Finnish side of Sápmi. You know, Sámi people, we are living in 4 different countries, in Norway, Finland, Sweden, and Russia. And, my home village is behind those mountains around 300 kilometers from here. But we don't have the borders. But now when the COVID time is, the Corona time, now the border between so-called Norway and so-called Finland is closed. And they are stopping me there and asking, where are you going? Like they have any rights to ask that. But they are, and I have to tell, I'm going to work in Kautokeino, or I'm going to home in Sevettijärvi. So that's it. I'm a film commissioner, and it means that I'm supporting Sámi and other indigenous filmmakers.
And Laila?
Yeah, so hello, I'm Laila Utsi, and I am a director here at the International Sámi Film Institute. And our film institute is, like Lisa says, it's located in a small village up north on the tundra, but it is the main center for Sámi language. Sámi language is the majority language here in Kautokeino, and it is taught in schools. And we also have a Sámi University of Applied Sciences where you can study in Sámi language, and we have many central Sámi institutions here. So we are in the heart of Sápmi and the Sámi language, and this is a good location. But we also work for Sámi filmmakers in Norway, Sweden, Finland, or Russia, wherever. We have many Sámi languages, 9 different living Sámi languages, and all of our languages are on the UN's list of either endangered or very endangered languages. So so we are working here and been here in Godegeitnu now for the past months, more or less all the time. So yeah.
So I think it's great if like you started here, Anna-Laila, to also give a little bit of background on the language situation in the region where you work, because as you mentioned, Sápmi covers 4 different national states, and also, like you say, 9 different languages, and I believe that some of these languages are only spoken by very, very few people. Can you give a little bit more background into how that landscape is?
Well, it is the North Sami language, which is the biggest language group, but also North Sami is endangered language, which is like under threat, and the number of North Sami speaking students is going down. It's a trend that is going down, and then of course other smaller Sami language groups, as the South Sami, which is the most southern of our languages, is on UN's list of very endangered languages. And I think we don't really have the official numbers how many are speaking, but what I have heard, maybe 500,000 people who speak it. But there are
2,000, not 500,000.
No, 5,000. Yeah, 500 or 1,000. They're around there, but nobody knows for sure. We don't have the statistics. But still, wonderful things are happening. Like, for example, Amanda Kernell's Sami Blood, which was a story from the South Sami areas, as Amanda Kernell is also a South Sami, and in this feature film, the South Sami language was one of the central language in the movie. So it is for us. It's for our institute. Our grants is the requirements for us to give a grant to a film. One of the main requirements is the Sami language. So we require that the main language of your film has to be one of the Sami languages. And this is like negotiable. It is like a very strict, and this is also why the Sami Film Institute was founded 10 years ago. It's one of our foundations, our language, and the emphasis on strengthening the language and also bringing our language to new platforms like films and games, and
Before we go too much into that, it would be nice to ask the same question to you, Eka Hansen, if you can elaborate a little bit on language in Greenland.
We have 2 main languages speaking that are spoken here in Greenland, which is one of them is Greenlandic, or Kalaallisut, which is not everybody who speaks this, but it's a native language of ours. And then we have Danish, which is the colonizers' language, which is the 2 dominant spoken languages here. And when I started in the film business, or actually I started in TV, which is one of the great institutes that we have here, because we have national TV, where they actually mostly or only produce Greenlandic speaking products. So I'm missing the word, but we mostly that's one of the great institutions that we actually have. It's radio and TV that's in our own language. And then going into the film business, I realized that, sorry?
Are you having the Greenlandic language teaching in the school? Is it the school language?
It's also one of the languages. Well, of course, it's recently changed, because when I started in school, you could either choose between going into the Danish speaking classes or the Greenlandic speaking classes. And the fact is that they actually kind of made a hierarchy, because if you wanted to educate yourself outside of Greenland, you would obviously need different language than the Greenlandic one. So it kind of, but that's political. But that's actually in my lifetime.
Mine as well, and it's political, but it's also super interesting and a very timely subject to discuss as well.
Definitely. So my class was the first integrated class that they wanted to try out whether it's doable to have both languages in one class. So I was very fortunate to become one of the first students in school, and they actually only changed this system in 2003, and that's so recent. But yeah, so going into the film business, I actually realized that there were no films existing 12 years ago that were exclusively in Greenlandic. We would have a lot of Danish people coming here to make films about Greenland or with Greenlanders or in many different ways, but they would mainly speak Danish. So I produced a children's film or a family film comedy about an anti-hero called Hinnarik that was a big success because it was in Greenlandic, and that's one of the first films that were produced here in our own language. So it's very recent for us to have native speaking in film.
Can you tell us a little bit, how was that like a revelation in terms of the meaning of language in media, because that was so new at the time?
Well, it was very interesting because then first we made this family, very funny film, very easygoing, and then the next production we had was a thriller, which had an age limit on 15 years. Mm-hmm. So, and at this time here in Greenland, we did not have what's it called? Like a system that could help us get the films out on the coast. We had to travel with the film ourselves. So when we were traveling with the film, we would tell people that this has an age limit, and then parents would be like, no, my child has to see this film because this is the first film they will understand from beginning to the end. I don't have to translate anything while we watch it. These people have been watching foreign films all their lives. Mm. And now all of a sudden their children could watch a film and understand every context of the film from beginning to the end. So we accepted a lot of younger than 15-year-olds, but I mean we also made it clear that it's your you have to take responsibility for this. It's a quite bloody film. It's called Qaqqalangui, and it was a big success.
Yeah, the biggest success of Greenlandic cinema still to this date, and I think it's an excellent point. And it even sounds like it might have been even scarier to exclusively have to watch film in a foreign language than to watch one film in your own language, even if it's a horror film. So I would like to ask the same question to you, Anne-Laila and Lisa, because the Sami film industry is young as well, and I remember especially for you, Anne-Laila, watching the first Sami language film was a landmark experience for you and a life-changing experience for you as well.
Yeah, I was 14 years old when the Pathfinder Nilsköp's Oscar-nominated film had a premiere here in Godegeino, and I remember me and my cousin, we put on I do even have a picture here, I can show you, but we put on our gaktis and we went to the cultural house, and I remember we came in there and the room was full of people, everyone in our gaktis, our national dress is on, and even Nils Goep, the director, and the main actor, Mikkel Goep, they were sitting there in the cinema. And I remember the feeling of when the film started, and it's such a beautiful opening scene in the film where Aigin, the main character, is sliding down the white snowy tundras, and then Ailuhas, our great artist who has passed away, his yoik is playing over that, and then you see Mikkel Goop with his beautiful blue eyes, and then we heard our language for the first time on a big screen in a cinema, and it made such an impression on us, and it was the first time we saw ourselves reflected in a film, our culture and our language, and it was such a proud moment for all of us, and I think especially for us who were young then at that time. And I remember after the screening, a journalist from the local newspaper came and wanted to take a picture, and I don't know if you can see it, but this is the picture. So this is me and my cousin and our great film star in the middle. And I even have his autograph here on the yeah. So that was my first experience of seeing a Sami language film, and I think this film is the reason for all that has happened since for Sami films, and it's also the reason we have a Sami Film Institute, and now we have the support system, and many great other filmmakers who have come after Nils Goop, like Amanda Kernell, Elmaia Tailfeathers, Maria Bolnango, so many incredible women who are winning awards, and just, incredible.
And it also goes to tell a bit about how important these landmark films are. I mean, The Pathfinder was the first Norwegian film to ever be nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
And I think for Amanda Kernell's film Sami Blood, there was also like a sleeper hit, a film that no one really expected anything from, and it could hardly find any distribution. And it went on to play at all major film festivals, having great box office especially in her home country, nation, Sweden, and winning many awards. What do these kinds of landmark titles, what do they mean for new generations of filmmakers and storytellers in Sápmi?
Well, in my opinion, it is leading the way, like Nils Goop did with Pathfinder, because it was the first ever Sami feature film, and he was walking the deep snow, and nobody believed in a Sami language film then. He used 10 years to convince the financiers in Norway and in the Nordic countries about that this is possible. And of course, it's such a great inspiration for the new generation of filmmakers to come, that that our films, even though they are so few, the funding system is still so unfair, I would say, because it's such a big gap when it comes to Sami or any indigenous film financing, and even though the situation is like that, it's and we have much fewer films made each year, but still the films we do make, they are winning awards. They are really successful films. So I think we really need those big films, feature films, and serious, and it will lead the way to the future and inspire and recruit new filmmakers. It's really crucial.
Lisa, is that a trend that there are less films being made every year, as Anna-Laila says?
Yeah, the trend is that there is no Sami films, the feature-length films. Yeah. Like Amanda's film was the last one, and it is now
4 years ago.
No, more. It is
2016.
16, right? I think it was.
Yeah, it is 4 years.
I saw the 4 years anniversary photos from the Venice red carpet.
Yeah. And then before that, it was 10 years. And it has been a 10 years, now it's 4 years. Well, we know that next summer there will be a Sami feature-length film coming. And then, of course, we got the first Sami children film funding in the beginning now. So 2023, it will be the first Sami children film. But the trend is that we have to fight. But nowadays, like Amanda Kernell, Taika Waititi, and these big names who are winning the prizes, the argue which we are all hearing is that there is no audience to your film. Your own group of people are so small, like Sami people, 100,000. So it is not enough. But then we can say, but how come Amanda Kernell won in Venice Film Festival with this kind of film which don't have a publicum? So that's also, but I can see that we are coming up more, the interest to our films or our issues or our ideas is big and strong.
Yeah, and it sounds like with the projects you have in the pipeline now that the pace is actually picking up. So that's going to be interesting to keep track on. But Aga, in Greenland, in your role as the manager of the Filmiljotarfik, the permanent film workshop facilities, what kind of works or films do the young people today, when they enter your facility and work on short films, how do they, what references do they have? Are there similar Greenlandic films that have been important to them growing up, and what kind of environment is that?
Yes, I think it's very common in all of the native or indigenous film communities that we have trailblazers, and then everybody else realize, okay, I can also tell my own story. And that's something that we really, really work on, telling these young people that your story is very important. You have to tell your story. It's very important to not just to the few of us here in Greenland or other Inuit, but it's very important to the world in general, because actually I think Hollywood is running out of stories to tell. They're looking towards indigenous communities to find new old stories, new myths, or all of our rich what's it called, like
traditions, the storytelling.
All traditional storytellings are so important to the world. I think it's only a matter of time when the people with the money realize that we actually have a lot of things to give to the rest of the film community. But I definitely also encounter a lot of young people coming up and saying, thank you so much for making these films, or I watched other filmmakers making films when I was a kid, so now I'm actually very interested into going into film. And so I think Amanda is one of the great examples for Sápmi, but also we have a lot of, Malik Kleist is one of our first movers here, and Inuxilius Høy, definitely one of my heroes for making films when I was a kid. So that's definitely people that we need to celebrate, these people that are trailblazers and walking before everybody else in the snow, but making paths for other young people who want to make film and tell their stories. So that's definitely something that we see here as well. And I think what I think is the problem, or is one of the issues that we are working against, is not getting enough support, financial support in our systems in the indigenous environments of filmmaking. So that's definitely something that has to change. And I know a lot of people here in Greenland have working towards getting money from outside of our own film system, support system. And that's definitely something that I think a lot of people are working towards, still getting finances, maybe not only in Denmark, but even in Canada. And I think some people are working together also with the institutes, with the Film Institute in Kautokeino and other places. And that's very important to be able to finance films, because that's somehow one of the biggest challenges, I think. But definitely, I mean, for the younger talents, we definitely just ask them to just tell your story, educate yourself through making a lot of short films, and then eventually you'll get there. But that's the goal, definitely.
And it's nice to mention also the world is bigger than us, right? And I think it was a very touching moment for all of us when you mentioned Taika. When he won the Oscar for the script for Jojo Rabbit, that he said that there are a place for indigenous kids like me on the stage as well. And I think that resonated with all of us, even if we are Samis or Inuit or Maoris. So that's an excellent point. And also, I think that in terms of indigenous filmmaking worldwide, financing is always an issue and something we should touch upon as well. Right now, I just wanted to stay with you, Aga, because in Greenland we don't have a film institute as they do in Sápmi and in many other of the regions that we compare ourselves with. But we do have the Filmljóðaþing. We do have the permanent film workshop now, which is a manned facility that's there. It's open all year round. So outside of training young talents, do you also, as manager of this institution, have other responsibilities in terms of filmmaking in general, in terms of language preservation and development through film? How is that? It seems like it might be a bigger responsibility than simply managing the workshop.
Well, yes, because I think what I realized taking over the film workshop last year was that we have to establish everything from zero. Like, people don't even know what is a film workshop and how can I just, we actually just want people to walk in there and say, I have an idea, and then we help them from their idea stage to the finished film. That's the point of the film workshop. But we still have not problems, but it's hard to get people in and actually so a lot of the work I have done has been actually telling people that we are here and we are here for you to help. It's very important for us to get you in so you can tell your story. But besides the physical workshops and all the equipment we have, we also do a lot of workshops for training people, and we have different categories where we know we lack people. We lack people in script writing, we lack people in producing, we lack people who can do sound engineering and sound editing. We need editors, and so in general we have focus on these issues, but we also just want to last year we had held 10 workshops in all different kinds, from everything from documentary directing and so on, but also the technical parts of filmmaking. So, and we're still working towards and doing a lot of workshops, but this year has been awful because of COVID, obviously for everyone, but at least we had a really well script workshop this summer. And so we are very much training people also to give them more knowledge about filmmaking.
And so you train not only kids wanting to come in to make their first short film, but also the industry in general?
Well, yes. The thing is that a lot of workshops in Europe, mainly in Europe, have an age limits to from, I don't know, young people to 30 years or 35 years. And here we actually decided that we don't want to limit on age. We just want anybody who are interested in becoming better at making films. So anybody is welcome at the film workshop. So yeah, we have had people that are up to 60 years old in on workshops. So that's really, that's a really big gift also to include everyone.
Yeah, the more the merrier. We really need more people in our regions making films and telling stories on films, for sure. Going back to you in Sápmi, how can, you established the Film Institute there in 2008, if I'm not mistaken. How did that change the game for you to be able to, as an institution, to pursue a different project or a different vision for what you wanted to do, whether it was talent development or language or anything else. I mean, that's really what we're talking about with Greenland. We don't really have any institution with the mandate or with the ability or the funding to say, now we are going to make something that is particularly about preserving language, for instance. How did that come about in Sápmi to be able to do that, and how have you worked with that?
Much of the motivation for the establishment of the Film Institute, like I said also earlier here in our talk, was the language issue, to that through film we should be able to use film also to strengthen the language and the identity and tell our own stories, and not just having everybody else from outside coming and tell stories about us, but we want to own the stories and we want to own the productions. And from the beginning it has been both like aiming for the big goal, which is more productions, bigger productions, because if our people are going to be able to live of, be a professional filmmaker, then it can't just be a hobby. You have to have enough production so you can, earn a living from that. And so we have both been working towards that goal of changing the system. And then of course also doing special emphasis on, for example, like we are now doing with the Sami feature film, the first ever feature film for children, which is an initiative from us, and we have got some good funding from a bank, a private investor here in northern Norway. And then we are also, when it comes to the language, the recent years we have also been working more and more on dubbing. So we both need our own languages, or our own productions in our own languages, but we can also support the volume of our own Sami language films, even though dubbing is not maybe our stories, but it's still a good way to support the language and make Sami language available on modern platforms where our children are, like every other children. So yeah.
And also that it's in the beginning, in our name, it's International Sami Film Institute. It is not Norwegian Sami Film Institute or anything like that. So it's very important to get across the borders. We are supporting all the Sami people, no matter where they are living. Yeah. And now we are also expanding with the projects to the other indigenous peoples, and the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund is a very good.
About that, the film fund, maybe very briefly, but also the joint collaborations with indigenous filmmakers from the circumpolar Arctic.
Was that a question or statement or
an attempt at a question, at least? Just if you could tell, you mentioned quickly the Arctic Circle film and the Arctic Chills. What are those projects?
And the Arctic Indigenous Talent Hub and Arctic Tundra Film Camps, they are our international projects with Canada and Greenland and Russia and Alaska. So those are the, like, why we are here making this International Sami Film Institute, and why Aka is there in Nuuk making and you, Emil, you have your own Greenland film and so on. So background. So it is that we need to be independent of our home states so that we can tell our stories. Otherwise, if you are asking all the time the money from Oslo or Helsinki or Copenhagen, so you have to tell that story. So in our point of view, it's very important that we create some sort of business environment where we can tell our stories. And I'm emphasizing the business part of this, because we can tell our stories, and we have been telling our stories 10,000s of years to each other, but now we are doing it to the screen, and the big screen and little screen, and that's the new technology how we are telling our stories. So that's very important to have Arctic Indigenous Film Fund to support all the Arctic filmmakers in Russia, in Greenland, in Canada, in Alaska.
Yeah, and also be able to look at the collaboration in a circumpolar, Arctic circumpolar perspective instead of north-south perspective, as it has been. That's like the main thing that has been going on. But with all the exciting talent and everything which is going on, like for example in Greenland and in Canada, Alaska, and it's such a strength in the indigenous film family, and
we don't have to. Yeah. We have to remember Imaginative, which is in the circle, in the center of our cooperation.
Yeah, and
it has been and is still.
Yeah, so that is what is really exciting to. So we are like pursuing our own goals in our own home areas, and at the same time changing a big system by doing so. And when we unite, as we have done already with the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund, which is established, and we are working hard to get it going. We can change, make great changes for the future of our filmmakers. I'm confident of that.
I think it's an interesting point that even with our small populations and the small means we have for film production, that we are still being inclusive towards other indigenous people as well. And I think for you in ISFI, in the Film Institute in Sapmi, to also support non-Sami indigenous directors, producers, is something that no nation-state film institute will do. So even with our little resources, it's important for us to do these kind of collaborative things and support other places and peoples, because we are basically in it together, right? To change the world for the better. So how do you see from your point of view the indigenous international collaboration happening in Greenland, and maybe even Filmiotasvik taking part of that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that's been said, that whenever Amanda Kendall is shining, everybody else gonna shine, because that's gonna set a focus on indigenous storytelling, and that's something different than the mainstream film business, and it's very important. And I think that's our goal, and that's everybody's dream, is to live up, well, at least from the indigenous people, that we can actually live sustainable in the film business, that we don't always have to go and get the money from outside, but actually can finance ourselves and live from it in a way. Yeah, so it's very important to us too here, and I think actually something that's a part of this indigenous film cinema is actually nation building. And I think language is one of the biggest things that's actually a part of this issue, because we have been a lot of things have been taken from us, and one of the things we have in common in all of the indigenous indigenous people's countries is that we have taken our language from us. Wow, my tongue is so heavy right now. Sorry about that. But I think that's something that actually where film is a very grateful media, because we actually can get so much across. It's not only cultural exchange, it's language, it's also it's dreams, it's some basic things like entertainment. That's something that's really, really, really necessary when you actually live in a colonized country, because you have something to I don't know, you have something to put in that is positive in so many ways. So I mean, even when it's the hard stories, even when it's the horror stories, even all of the stories, they put in a lot of things that we can't have from mainstream film media, cinema. So I think actually it's very important to have the film business as a part of nation building.
And I think that's a very beautiful place to end this conversation, with the fact that we as indigenous people can maybe find a way towards freedom through filmmaking. And I think that's absolutely true. We can change the world this way, and that's what we are all trying to do from our different parts of the world. So thank you so much for being part of this conversation, and Laila Utsi, Lisa Holmberg from Sápmi, and Aga Hansen from Greenland. And thanks for watching.
Thank you, everyone.
Bueno.
Unfortunately, Akka Hansen couldn't join us for the Q&A, but we do have 3 other panelists, so I'll be posing your audience questions to them and they'll all be giving you answers. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us again from your regions and different time zones. Nice to see you. So we're gonna get right into it. Our first question from the audience is, has the fund, the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund that you mentioned in the panel, increased the amount of circulation of the works between Arctic Indigenous communities? So between, say, the Canadian Indigenous Inuit communities and international communities. Can you speak to how that fund has helped increase that cooperation?
Yeah, maybe I can start by saying something about the Arctic Indigenous Film Fund. First of all, it's an incredible collaboration. We have so many great partners all around the circumpolar Arctic, and also Sundance Film Institute is one of the partners, and Film GL in Greenland, and Canada Media Fund in Canada, Nunavut Film Development Corporation, and the International Sami Film Institute. So we have been working to set up everything, and we are now working on the funding, but we are not yet there that we have started, opened up for funding.
Amazing, thank you. So we have someone else who is mentioning that there seems to be a lot of funding, or not a lot, there's never a lot of funding, but there seems to be most funding for Indigenous language productions aimed towards youth. So they're wondering, do you see that trend? Is there more funding for youth in Indigenous language productions? And do you see a long-term plan of language-based revitalization sort of growing up with youth as a strategy for increasing Indigenous language productions?
Well, I think what we see in Greenland, to start there, is that we don't really see a big increase in funding for film production in general. I think funding production is actually the tricky part. And so what has proven to be a bit easier is to fund initiatives for, say, talent development. And in that area, then the youth, of course, is a driving force. And it's always, when we do collaborative project with the rest of the Arctic Indigenous world, then I think youth-driven projects are also in general easier to fund. But when it comes to production funding, I think it's still very tricky, and even more so for youths with little experience.
Absolutely. And Laila, Lisa?
Yeah, I think that it's the most important, the children and the young people, for the language. And now we can see a little bit increasing here in Norway or Nordic countries. We got the private funder, one bank, to come on board to the Sami children film. So we have got the first funding for that. And we hope that we will get sort of like continuing funding for the children and young people.
Yeah, and I can maybe just add to that we have a special focus from the Sami Film Institute for next year and the years to come. So more productions for children and youth, and then we have a really amazing collaboration with NRK Drama, which is the national broadcaster here in Norway, and we are developing a youth series with them. So it is, yes, it is slowly it's improving, but takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great initiative. So someone else is saying, Aka mentioned at one point about getting political in the conversation. So they're saying identity and language by extension is sort of always political. So what would you all say to people to encourage them to actually get political? Like, how do you start engaging as a filmmaker in these important conversations about language and language revitalization?
I can say that the language is always political. It's a human right. It's not only indigenous rights to have our own language. Our children must have our language, and it's a human right. So working for the children and young and for the language is always political to me.
Yeah.
And not only in terms of language, I think just simply making films as indigenous people is a political statement. It's a trend against the norm. It's a force against the current. It's an oppressed voice coming out, and I think you need to know that when you engage in film production, you need to embrace it. We've had several talks about this at Nuuk International Film Festival about what change we can make as filmmakers, and I think with indigenous films, every film makes a concrete change in the world. I mean, it pushes forward a wave, and I think for filmmakers coming out, for indigenous filmmakers coming out and doing the first film, I think it's important to know that what you're doing, it's important, it makes a difference, and there's also a responsibility.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point, Emil, that just by creating a film, that is a political statement as Indigenous people, especially when we consider the long history of cinema and how it's treated and shown Indigenous people. So our next question from our friend Temba Bebe, I believe. We've seen a few collaborations between Canadian First Nations, Métis, Inuit producers and Maori producers from New Zealand. Are there plans or initiatives where Indigenous producers from the circumpolar region will be able to collaborate with Indigenous producers elsewhere? I think, Emil, you've maybe got something along those lines, develop it?
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm producing with other Arctic Indigenous producers in Canada, and I mean we have several joint collaborative projects with the Samis and with Nunavut and Sakha region in Russia. So yeah, there are collaborations going on. I think initiatives like the film festival we have in Greenland now, Nuuk International Film Festival, is also an event where people can come together when it's possible. Online or physical, in hopefully next year. It's also a chance for Indigenous people from other parts of the world, for the Southern Hemisphere, to come and to engage and to do films together. And I think we really would like that. I think it's interesting to see us as Indigenous people worldwide and to experience with, and I know that this is what they do in Aotearoa in New Zealand, in Maoriland Film Festival, and Tainui Stevens is always talking about it. How great will it be to have a Sami director directing a film in Greenland with a Maori crew from New Zealand and Aborigines from Australia, and really like sort of mixing it up a little bit. So I think that's really a dream, and I think right now basically production funding is the greatest barrier to make that happen. Not to mention COVID, of course, but I think in the future, and especially with the tendencies that we have now to actually get more funding for Indigenous films, let's try to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also from the Sami perspective, this has been very important for us from the very beginning, like 10 years ago when we started the Sami Film Institute. The first thing was to look for our indigenous friends out there who are also doing amazing films, and we have really built that relationship for a long time, and we are now doing indigenous horror series. It's an Arctic indigenous co-production with Canada, Greenland, and Saha in Yakutia. Lisa is in charge of that project. So, and also we are talking with Emil, you mentioned Maoriland, and have some collaboration plans there as well. So I totally agree. It's such a huge possibility to join the forces, because we are so many indigenous peoples in the world, and there is such a strength in that. So it's really, really exciting.
Absolutely. So our next question, wondering if you could speak to, I guess, the sort of broader overview of advocacy in your region. So are there other organizations advocating for Indigenous language revitalization, whether film-based or not? What kind of supports in terms of advocacy are there in your regions?
We have, in the Nordic country, we have Skammakovat Film Festival, which is now 22 years old. So it has been there a long time to open their gates for Sami and other indigenous people's films. And then we have, of course, lots of music festivals and so on. But we have a language centers to the language.
And also we can mention this week is the Sami Language Week here in Sapmi. So there is a lot of events going on all around Sapmi, and it's really, we are screening some films here and there, and it's really nice.
Amazing.
Yeah. In Greenland, we have several institutions that deal with preserving language and developing language as well. I think it may be a little bit different because Greenlandic is the official language in Greenland, of course, and so still under pressure in some parts of, especially the government bodies, from Danish. But I think the minority languages in Greenland are really like the minority dialects, like Northern Greenlandic or Eastern Greenlandic, and those are issues that we also need to address when we make films. Are all Greenlandic films only in like the mainstream Western Greenlandic dialect, or should we try to also to be more diverse in terms of making films in other dialects? And then I think one very important thing is that we don't have a film institute, so we don't have the mandate or the authority that the Samis do to say that in order to get support, for instance, you need to make the film in the Sami language, or you need to make the film in Greenlandic. So there's, with the production funding in Greenland, there's no rules in terms of how much of the film should be in Greenlandic or how many of the films should be in Greenlandic. It's really like for the filmmakers to decide on their own. So I think in that respect, I think there could be done more to preserve and develop Greenlandic through film.
Yeah, so maybe seeing the need for a federally funded film institute in Greenland to advocate for those things, similar to ISO here, Screen Australia, or New Zealand Film Commission.
It's so important, yes.
So I'm wondering off that, if Lisa and Anna-Laila, could you speak briefly to the creation of the Sami Film Institute? You said it's been 10 years, so like I'm sure there was tons of years of activism and advocacy before that, but how did it come about?
Well, it was, how to start that? Well, we were a group of filmmakers. Lisa was one of them. I was one of them, and many of the filmmakers that are also active now, that we struggled very much to fund our films through the national film bodies in the Nordic countries. So then we thought, well, we need our own film institute, and that's how the whole thing started. And then we got 1.5 million kroner from the Ministry of Culture in Norway. and we started, and we had no idea how do we do this, how do we start. So then we looked at the films we had when we had Nilsco, who had made Pathfinder and all the big fiction films, but we didn't have a new, like the young people, the new generation of Sami filmmakers. So that's where we started, by making a lot of new fiction and building like the new generation of Sami filmmakers, and that has been really successful, and they are now stepping up to bigger formats like feature films and series. So yeah, we have really built it slowly and worked hard for the funding, and we are still working hard for that to so shortly. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you do work so hard and you do so much. You know, it's always so amazing to me to see what strong and inspirational advocates you are for your cultures and your traditions and your storytelling. It's, you know, it really inspires a lot of us here in other regions as well. So our next question, what do you think about the idea of support for language learning for filmmakers and crew who want to make an Indigenous language production? So, you know, could ISFI maybe fund crew members to learn the language leading up to production if they aren't fluent in it? Or are there some initiatives in Greenland that could help people become more fluent in the language to make those productions? Should that be something that we look to?
That's a very interesting question, and from the Sami perspective, because we have a lot of our people, like so many other indigenous peoples, have lost the like Sami language. They don't speak it, and that's a discussion we have all the time when it comes to, because our requirement for funding is that the film has to be in Sami language. So many of our filmmakers who maybe don't speak the language themselves, maybe they understand something, but still they want to make the film in the Sami language, and we try to support that in any way we can and translate and but it's a very interesting question. Yeah.
And for Greenland, it's the way the question is phrased, it doesn't really seem so relevant, because I mean Greenlandic is the language, so like in almost any film production it would be the on-set language, it would be the on-screen language, so it's not threatened in that way. But what maybe could be interesting was to look for maybe new initiatives in what I mentioned before about minority dialects, or to diversify the Greenlandic language in films. And also right now I'm working on several projects that take place in historic eras in Greenland's history, and so that's a lot of hard work in trying to make that truthful in terms of how people would speak back then, and we don't really have any resources to do that, so we need to do a lot of work with historians and language experts, and so initiatives that can kind of make our films more authentic in terms of language could maybe be an idea that would be interesting for Greenland as well.
That's cool. So initiatives that might help, sort of recreate or learn some of that history that has been lost, especially in terms of the language, if you're going back to a period piece.
Just I mean, dialogue coaches for actors to learn the Eastern dialect or the Northern dialect and to use it on film.
Absolutely. We are just out of time here. I want to thank you again so much for being here. We have one last thing to get to, and that's our giveaway winner. So someone who asked an audience question is now going to win a $100 gift certificate to our merch store. So we have a lot of really great imaginative merch this year: water bottle, blanket, hoodies. And our winner is Lindsay McIntyre. Congrats, Lindsay. Yay! So we'll be in touch via email, and thank you to the panelists again, Anna, Lila, Lisa, and Emil. Thank you so much for that wonderful discussion and for lending your knowledge and expertise today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.